In this second very brief tutorial, we're going to look at one of the other components that's available from the CAD library, which is the bearing. Now, the bearing is a standard plastic component, helps you to mount motors and other fittings onto the metal. It also supports some of the metal structures such as the shafts so that they don't wobble so much when they're operating through the motors, and gives the robot generally more stability. But what could you do with this component if you had to 3D print it again and modify its design? Some obvious solutions are to make it across, to make it very long, to make it longer or thinner, and using some of the basic tools we can actually modify this part quite easily. So again, we can use the Start 2D Sketch option. We can select onto the surface we want to model. For example, we might want to model onto here. And if we just use the view cube to just resize that in there, again we might want to project the cut edges, and that will give us the top surface that we're working to, and obviously give us geometry that our tools will snap to. One example might be that we actually want to continue on this existing pattern here. So we might zoom in and draw our way around, just using the basic line tool, this outside profile. And this is just click to click. I'm using the middle mouse button to roll in and out. And again, we're looking to create a consistent and closed piece of line work. We now have, as you can see, that blue shape complete. We could add the center circle in here, and again just finish our sketch. And in this instance we might just want to use an extrude and extrude the shape up. And as you can see, what they'll do is that'll provide an extrusion of that existing part. This might be where the shaft comes through the bearing and the metal frame, and it starts to wobble before it gets into contact with the wheel, or maybe it's wobbling despite the additional collars that you've added to the frame. So you might include this so that the metal bar is effectively supported all the way along its length before it actually comes out and interacts with any of the wheels or the gears. So it could be a nice structural piece that you use. One of the things that's really important is obviously to try and keep the consistency of your design, thinking always about the 3D printing. This design here is no problem to 3D print because it will start from the base layer and it will build up and up and up on top of itself. If we were to make an overhang over the top, then we'd have to have some kind of support material in place to actually support that part as it printed. A good example is an earlier modification that I've done, which is this bearing here. And this bearing actually mirrors the existing first bearing, as you can see, which has been remodeled on the other side. There's the additional support structure in the middle. But to 3D print this part out with this section being on the bottom, or the base plate being on the bottom down here, this would require a considerable amount of support in between to support this part being printed above. What we might actually have to do is to print the part either this way or perhaps this way, and because of the layering as 3D printers work, we might find that this circle here becomes slightly out of tolerance, which might then affect the spinning of the shaft or any rods or poles running through those holes as they're operating with the robot. So again, simple extrusion, a sketch onto the surface, and you can create quite an interesting part. Just have a think about what you could do.